Well, the Sony a7C Mark II had the exact same specifications as the Sony a7 IV, a top-selling camera that's been selling very, very well since it was introduced back in December of 2021. Well, sources say yes. Details coming up. But first, please do me a favor. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe, choose all notifications, like, comment, and all that stuff, as it really helps this channel grow. Sony Alpha Rumours says that a trusted source says it's highly likely that the a7C Mark II is going to be announced in 2023. Now, when it comes to Sony Alpha Rumours, what you really want to keep an eye out for is certain keywords that they use in their information or their stories about upcoming cameras and lenses. And whenever you see a story that says comes from a known trusted source, a validated source, well, then the likelihood of that information coming to, well, fruition is highly likely. We saw this with the Sony a7R5. However, if we don't see validated, if we don't see from a trusted source, well, then it's mostly conjecture, and quite often we see the words wild rumor. Sony Alpha Rumours goes on stating that another source, although this one hasn't been identified as being trusted or validated, said that Sony has already reserved some components from the a7 IV for another camera, including the sensor and IBIS. And they also schedule increased production for the EVF from the a7C Mark I. So we're expecting the a7C Mark II this year, sometime soon, same specs as the Sony a7 IV, and a redesigned shell, but the same EVF as the a7C Mark I. This is a pretty big deal. This is pretty big news to actually get the same capabilities of the top-selling Sony a7 IV, a camera that's been selling very, very well for the last year, since it was announced back in December of 2021. The same specifications of that camera, the a7 IV, to go in the a7C Mark II? That sounds impressive, but this other source, well, it's not trustworthy, it's not reliable, or at least, sorry, I should rephrase that, it hasn't been identified as being trustworthy or reliable. But then Sony Alpha Rumours goes on to say this. It's super safe. I love that, super safe. It's super safe to say that the a7C Mark II will have the same a7 IV specs. Both the A9 Mark III and the a7C Mark II, I believe that's a typo because he's been talking about the a7C Mark II, and there's no a7C Mark II out there, so let's ignore that typo, the a7C Mark III. Anyhow, he goes on to say they are now solidly confirmed to be coming in 2023. Now, whether you're in the market for an updated successor to the Sony a7C Mark I, or you're interested in purchasing the Sony a7 IV, you want to take a look at the specifications between these two cameras. Here we have the Sony a7C Mark I. Without a lens, it sells for $1,798. The sensor, it's a backside illuminated sensor with a resolution of 24.2 megapixels. It has a Bionz X image processor, and video is limited to 4K 30, but it does do HLG, and it has S-Log3. It has a 693-point autofocus system. It's a hybrid autofocus system. It has a relatively low resolution EVF of 2.36 million dots, and it has a variable angle touchscreen that's 3 inches. And of course, it's got IBIS. But now let's take a look at the a7 IV, a camera that sells for $700 more at $2,498. It has a 33 megapixel backside illuminated sensor, so that would be a rather significant boost to the a7C Mark II, going from 24.2 to 33 megapixels. And on the video side, we can see that the a7 IV can shoot 4K up to 60 frames per second, so we're getting a boost all the way up to 4K 60. We get a better autofocus system with real-time eye tracking. The only question I wonder here, is it going to have the same autofocus system found in the a7R5? Will it have that artificial intelligence chip? Remember that when we were talking about the Sony a7R5, all information at the time was pointing to that every new camera after that was going to have this new improved autofocus system, but they didn't specify whether it was going to get the AI chip. It has focus breathing compensation, and it can shoot at 10 frames per second, but this is one of those areas where I'm a little bit unsure. The Canon EOS R10, selling for $979, can shoot at 23 frames per second electronic, 15 frames per second mechanical, for a camera that sells for $979. Now, know with that camera, once you hold down the shutter button, you've got about a second, and then it takes time to clear out. But if we look at the Canon EOS R6 Mark II, a camera that sells for the same price as the Sony a7 IV, well, that camera can shoot at 40 frames per second. 40 frames per second, making the a7 IV at 10 frames per second seeming a little bit, well, not up to the job. But keeping in mind, the a7C Mark II is more of an entry-level camera. It sells for $1,798. Is Sony going to keep that 10 frames per second the same? I don't know, with the competition kind of nibbling at its feet, I would expect it to boost up that 10 frames per second. But the real difference between these two cameras, the a7C Mark II, the rumored a7C Mark II, and that's the key here, and of course the a7 IV, which is currently on the market, is that $700 price difference. So we have the same capabilities for the a7C Mark II and the a7 IV, but a $700 price difference? Is the price going to stay a $700 price difference? And if so, well then what is it that's going to be different between these two cameras? I can't see Sony selling the a7C Mark II with the exact same specifications as the Sony a7 IV and not doing anything differently. For example, will the buffer be not as good? What other differences will there be with these cameras? And that's the real answer. Did I just say that's the real answer? What I mean to say is that's what we need to focus on. And because this is still a rumor, even though it's coming from reliable and trusted sources, actually, let's take another look at that quote on Sony Alpha Rumors website. A trusted source. I like that because a trusted source tells us that when it comes to Sony Alpha Rumors, that they know this information is probably 80 to 90% correct. It's really good news. However, the source says that it's highly likely. Highly likely? You take something that's relatively credible and then you throw in highly likely, which tells us that this source really doesn't know too much about this. They're not sure. Highly likely? Look, you either know that it's coming out, you either know that it's the a7C, you either know that it's got the exact same specs as the a7 IV, or you don't. Highly likely, what that tells me is that, well, maybe the chain of command or the chain of information from where the information came at Sony to the source, there's too many people in between. There's a bit of broken telephone, and some of the information that's been coming through that chain, that broken telephone, well, maybe it can't be trusted. Maybe there's some holes in the information. Maybe there's some interpretation of what's being said. So in conclusion, all we really know here for sure, based on what the trusted source is telling us, is that the Sony a7C Mark II is coming out here in 2023. And Sony Alpha Rumors themselves are saying that it's super safe to say that the a7C Mark II will have the same a7 IV specs. The a7C Mark II, the a9 Mark III are coming out in 2023, and the a7C Mark II is going to have the exact same specifications. Interesting, right? What do you think? Let me know in the comment section down below about the reliability of this information and whether you're interested in the a7C Mark II or the Sony a7 IV. And if you want to stay up to date on all the latest camera news and rumors, do yourself and me a favor and hit that subscribe button, followed by choosing all notifications. By choosing all notifications, basically you save yourself scrubbing all the Twitter feeds, RSS feeds, your favorite websites, YouTube channels, print magazines, and the list goes on, because I cover all the major camera brands, all the major camera models, news and rumors, all in one spot. And if anything I talked about in this video, you're interested in purchasing anything, well then please use my links down below, because it helps this channel grow. I get a 1 to 2% back, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.